ARM Holdings ARM Beginner's Guide. If you are listening to this on your phone right now, there is a roughly 99% chance the chip inside that phone was designed using technology from the company we are talking about today. ARM Holdings is the single most important chip design company you have probably never thought about. Quick reminder before we go further, this is for learning only, not financial advice, and we will not be touching stock prices, valuation, or buy or sell calls in this beginner guide. We are just going to walk through what ARM actually does, who it competes against, and why the business has grown the way it has. So, what does ARM actually do? Here's the simplest way to think about ARM. ARM does not actually make chips. It designs blueprints for chips, specifically, the brains of chips called CPUs, which stands for Central Processing Unit, basically the main thinking part of any computer or phone. ARM then licenses those blueprints to other companies: Apple, Qualcomm, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, NVIDIA, and those companies build the actual silicon. Every time one of those finished chips gets shipped inside a phone, a laptop, a data center server, or a car, ARM collects a small fee called a royalty. So ARM makes money two ways. First, royalties, about 54% of revenue, or roughly $2.2 billion in their last fiscal year, which is that per chip toll, paid every time someone ships a chip with ARM technology inside. About 7.9 billion of these chips ship every single quarter. Second, licensing, about 46% of revenue, or roughly $1.8 billion, which is the upfront fee a chipmaker pays to get access to the design library in the first place. ARM's gross margin is around 97%, because once you have designed the blueprint, copying it is essentially free. The business model is genuinely unusual. ARM sits in the middle, with about 7,000 engineers building IP, which stands for intellectual property, meaning the actual design files and patents on one side, and on the other side, every major chip maker on the planet paying ARM to use them. So, who does ARM compete with, and how does it win? ARM's moat, that is a term you will hear a lot. It just means the competitive advantage that keeps other companies from catching up, is rated very wide, and here is why. ARM controls something called the ISA, which stands for Instruction Set Architecture. Think of an ISA as the basic language a chip uses to talk to software. About 99% of smartphones in the world use ARM's instruction set, and more than half of the chips running inside the giant data centers operated by Amazon, Google, and Microsoft now use it too. Over 350 billion ARM-based chips have shipped over the company's lifetime, and there are more than 22 million software developers around the world who have already learned to write code for ARM. That last number is the real moat, network effects, which just means the product gets more valuable as more people use it. More ARM chips means more developer tools, which means more apps, which means more demand for ARM chips. It is a self-reinforcing loop. The main long-term competitor is something called RISC-V, pronounced RISC-V, which is a free, open-source alternative to ARM's instruction set. RISC-V is real and it is growing, but ARM has roughly 10 times as many developers, and RISC-V is still missing the high-performance chips and mature software tools needed for serious phones, laptops, or data centers. Analysts generally see a 5 to 10-year gap. The one piece of ARM's business that is most exposed to geopolitics is ARM China, which is about 17% of revenue and could be affected by US-China policy shifts. What are the key drivers for the business over the past 5 years? 3 forces have driven ARM's growth, and they are all worth understanding because they tell you where the company is heading. First, something called CSS, which stands for Compute Subsystems. Instead of just selling a single CPU blueprint, ARM now sells pre-integrated platforms, basically a ready-to-go chip layout, that cut a chip maker's design time by roughly half. CSS commands a higher royalty rate than the older, single-core licenses, and 21 or more CSS licenses have already been signed across 12-plus companies. All 4 of the top Android phone makers are now shipping CSS-based chips, and Microsoft's new Cobalt 200 server chip, which has 132 cores, is built on CSS too. Management thinks CSS could be more than half of all royalties within a few years. Second, the data center. This used to be Intel's home turf, traditional x86 chips, the architecture inside most servers and PCs for decades. That is changing fast. Amazon's Graviton server chips are ARM, Google's Axion is ARM, Microsoft's Cobalt is ARM, NVIDIA's new Vera server CPU is ARM. Data center royalty revenue doubled year-over-year in ARM's most recent quarter. And ARM's CEO has said publicly that by the end of the decade, ARM will hold the largest share of CPUs in the cloud. Third, AI agents. This is the newest and possibly biggest driver. As AI shifts from generating one answer at a time to running thousands of background agents that each do tasks on their own, every one of those agents needs its own CPU core to run on. ARM's new AGI CPU, AGI here is just the product family name for their next-generation data center chip, packs 136 cores onto a single chip, which is roughly twice the core count of comparable x86 chips. Companies including SAP, Cloudflare, F5, SK Telecom, OpenAI, and Cerebras are all designing on ARM. Each new AI workload means more cores, which means more royalties for ARM. To wrap up, so if you boil it all down, ARM Holdings is a designer of chip blueprints that gets paid a small fee every time someone ships a chip built on those designs. Essentially a toll collector sitting at the foundation of the entire mobile world and increasingly the data center world too. What to keep an eye on as a learner: watch how quickly ARM's new AGI CPU silicon and its CSS platforms get adopted by the big cloud providers and the top phone makers, because that is where the next leg of growth comes from. And watch for any real breakthrough from RISC-V on the high-performance side, since that is the only structural threat to the moat. Once again, this was a business overview for learning, not investment advice. If you want to actually research ARM as an investment, dig into the financials, the competition, and the risks for yourself.